Thank you, Carlos, for that exquisite explanation. Now we will be switching gears and discussing European Christianity during the High Middle Ages. Roman Catholic Christianity guided European thought on religious, moral, and ethical matters, and many works of art, literature, and music were actually inspired by Christian doctrines. And Catholicism visually dominated Western Europe's skyline with the spires of churches and cathedrals. However, Western Christianity changed drastically during the High Middle Ages. One thing that changed during the High Middle Ages was the level of education. During the early Middle Ages, European society was very unstable and therefore could not provide institutions of advanced learning. Only some rudimentary education at monasteries and occasional scholars at courts existed. And then, during the High Middle Ages, Europe increased wealth and therefore made higher education possible. Schools were based in cathedrals and contained advanced curriculums of Latin writings in literature, philosophy, some law, medicine, and theology. Furthermore, academic guilds between students and teachers formed in the 12th century and promoted higher education in cathedral schools and transformed them into universities. The evolution of the university coincided with the rediscovery of the works of Aristotle. As Arabic and Byzantine Greek texts were translated to Latin, they circulated through Europe, spreading popularity among the elite. St. Thomas Aquinas was a major proponent of scholasticism, which was the synthesis of Christianity and Greek philosophy, and he attended the University of Paris as a teacher and taught there for most of his career. However, due to scholasticism's appeal towards the elite, the population at large of Western Europe remained hardly affected by the movement, and many continued their devotion to the Roman Catholic Church and did rituals such as the seven sacraments and increased devotion to saints and their relics. And the most popular of these saints during this time was the Virgin Mary, who was the mother of Jesus Christ. Some saints' relics became so popular that many would go on long journeys just to see them, and these were known as pilgrimages. Popular religion also reflected social and economic development. As Europe grew wealthier and wealthier, many worried that European people became too materialistic. In fear of this, Saint Dominic and Saint Francis formed a order of mendicants, which were beggars who took vows of poverty and only took what they could beg for, or had what they could beg for, through preaching in public places. And yeah. Whereas Franciscans and Dominicans worked within the church, some groups just rejected the Catholic Church as a whole. And one such group were called the Waldenesians, and they considered the Catholic Church immoral and corrupt, and they urged more lay control of preaching, and the lay were just the common followers, whereas the Catholic Church reserved the right of preaching for only priests and clergymen. And another group that opposed the Catholic Church was the Cathars, also known as the Albanesians, and they promoted chastity, vegetarianism, and poverty. However, Pope Innocent III of the Catholic Church called a military strike on the Cathar movement in the 13th century and utterly destroyed all of their followers and following, and only a couple communities survived in remote areas. During the High Middle Ages, the relationship between Western Europe and its neighbors changed dramatically. They began expansive campaigns on all fronts, which they used to spread Christianity and influence. As regional states began to form to protect Western Europe from Viking raids, Scandinavian seafarers turned their attention towards the North Atlantic Ocean. In doing so, they explored many settlements such as Iceland, Greenland, and modern-day Newfoundland in Canada, which they called Vinland due to its plentiful grapes. And these Canadian settlements did not succeed, and meanwhile, as Scandinavians explored new land, their old home in Scandinavia, in Europe, was being converted to Christianity. Religious Christians formed military religious orders. Some included the Templars, Hospitallers, and the Teutonic Knights, and they were all groups of crusaders that as we know them, and they took religious vows of opposition to Islam and paganism and founded churches and monasteries in the new lands which they subdued. Christianity often came into conflict with other popular religions such as Islam, and an instance of this was in Sicily, where the island of Sicily off the coast of Italy was taken by the Muslims in the 9th century. However, it was reconquered by two Norman adventurers, and they were brothers named Robert and Roger Guiscard, and they slowly displaced Islam and over time, and it was a gradual decrease as they either moved out or converted. Another instance of Islam and Christianity clashing was in the Reconquista of Spain, and at one time only two small Christian states survived in Spain, and however during the Reconquista it was a rapid, forceful assertion of Christian authority. In 1095 AD, Pope Urban II calls for the liberation of Jerusalem from Muslim control. Although not recognized as the First Crusade, it was the first true crusade, and all casualties of this crusade were promised, salvation was promised to them, and Peter the Hermit raised popular frenzy and rapid enthusiastic response among many followers of Christianity. However, most of these people were not trained for battle, and their mob was destroyed on the way to Jerusalem due to their inexperienced military skills. It was a complete disaster, ending in many casualties. From 1096 to 1099, a more organized expedition was arranged by the Christians, and this was known as the First Crusade, although it was the second, and it ends up capturing Jerusalem due largely to the poor Muslim organization at the time, as they were in disarray, but it was partly due also to the more experienced military of the Christians. And shortly after Jerusalem is conquered, it is recaptured by Salah al-Din and the Muslim forces in 1187 AD. Latter crusades ended in disaster. By the mid-13th century, 5 crusades had been made and none successful. In fact, the 4th crusade went far astray, and the Crusaders ended up conquering Constantinople. And Constantinople never fully recovered from this blow, and was a pretty big reason for the fall of the Byzantine Empire. These crusades provided direct contact with Muslim ideology and trade, as well as other practices such as paper production, and also the system of Arabic numerals.